Here you are again. Your ship has crash-landed, this time on Aether, a world halved into darkened light by a mysterious impact. You've come to aid the Federation troops, but none remain. Only an overpowering sense of terror looms. There has been much death and destruction on the planet of Aether. It will soon fade into darkness. Do you turn back and head to your ship? No. You're Samus Aran, the fearless bounty hunter. The light of this world will be protected, and the gloom that threatens it, extinguished. This is essentially the story behind Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. It's presented in a darker manner than previous Metroids, and it's really fitting for the franchise. Samus Aran is always alone on her quest. It's pretty much just you and a huge world to explore. The benefit of the Prime franchise is that the story is revealed to you through the many scan points along the way, and for the most part, they're quite well written. So you really put the story together yourself, and as you head towards the end, you can reward yourself by getting the sensation that you've really uncovered the evil on your own. Echoes is still very much about this sense of isolation. I think Retro Studios has done a fantastic job, yet again, setting up this feeling of solitary confinement, especially with the through-the-visor perspective. This opens the door wide for what Echoes is, an exploration game, an adventure at heart. The great debate on it being categorized as a first-person shooter will likely rage on, but make no mistake, Prime 2 Echoes is much like the first. This means that while you certainly spend time fighting enemies off, if you want, the real meat of the experience is in the search and the puzzles that come along the way, much like Zelda isn't strictly an action game, for example. Let's break down then what really makes up gameplay, and in my opinion, what makes it shine. Prime 2 is certainly one of GameCube's top titles, and I think it's a hardcore gamer's game. More than that, it's for Metroid fans. There are specific things that really make it unlike anything else. I think the atmosphere that Retro has created is nearly unsurpassed in video games. The art direction is just jaw-dropping. Everything is alive. Every room has a lot of layers to it. And when you spend a lot of time looking around, you can't help but appreciate it. Smoke and sparks fill the Agon Waste. There's a distinct sense of industry and metal here. Torvus is a rainy, wet place with deep underwater realms that lurk. The temple grounds are basically a desert under the hot sun. Eventually, you end up at the Sanctuary Fortress, which is my favorite area because the art is so stylish. Everything is basically electronic and energized. Check out these intricate little electronic insects that litter the walls in the Sanctuary. Simply awesome style. Then there's the Dark World, which represents half of the experience. Down here, the air is caustic, so Samus has to jump from one protected dome of light to the next. This forces you to strategize during fights and during exploration. Every part of the Dark World has similar geometry to the Light World, but with its own unique puzzles, enemies, and fixtures, it doesn't feel cheap or redundant. It does, however, feel claustrophobic. While the sensation is interesting at first, you will dread the Dark World at times. It really takes getting to a place like the Sanctuary Fortress before you really start to appreciate the duality of the worlds. Prime 2 has you solving puzzles in both the light and dark world. You'll have to use portals to constantly switch between key areas, and this is really the most daunting part of Prime 2. The exploration is really intense. You have to know how to use the 3D map, which is really effective. But I think it could have used an upgrade, perhaps a way to switch on and off certain color doors, or highlight rooms that have unopened doors. Speaking of upgrades, that's why you explore this really huge world that's been created. Samus, of course, loses most of her power-ups around the time that she lands. Finding them after exploring for hours is where the payoff is. However, this is where Prime 2 can feel the same. You're searching for many of the same power-ups, Morph Ball, Boost Ball, Missiles, Power Bomb, etc. However, fortunately, new additions have not been completely glanced over. The new Dark and Light Beam add a tremendous amount of strategy to enemy battles, and there are brand new suits and features as well. The Screw Attack has been most anticipated by fans, because it hasn't been seen since Super Metroid. How does it end up working? Well, once you finally got about 15 hours into the gameplay, it's great. It speeds up travel, and Retro even opted for some isometric viewpoints to allow for vertical wall jumping. Thank goodness. However, because it does come late in the experience, it doesn't feel completely utilized, and there's a nagging sensation that it was kind of forced into the design. Nonetheless, it's very welcome. There are some new weapons. I think the Seeker missiles, where you can fire 5 missiles at once, are a great addition to the mix. Then, of course, you have the new visors. The Dark Visor allows you to see hidden switches, and can be pretty useful in combat. Then there's the Echoes Visor, which is like the Screw Attack in that it takes a lot of time to get. When you finally do get it, it's just really bizarre. It allows you to find special sonic switches that are hidden, but more than that, you have to identify tones and solve puzzles in that way sometimes. It's strange, but because it's integrated into boss fights and exploring, it adds yet another layer of complexity, which I am all for. Of course, the visors still get affected by the environment. You'll get really messed up and splattered by dark goo from the guys in the Dark World. Water rolls off your visor. Electricity interferes with it. Mist creates dew. And even bright light will temporarily blind you at certain points. It just really adds to the immersion level. The Morph Ball and Spider Ball aspects of the game are probably still my favorite though, since they fit in the series so well. Retro Studios have taken a lot of time to make ball play a core element. You will find Spider Ball tracks everywhere, on the walls, hidden in glass cylinders, on spinning wheels. There's even entire boss battles that are based on them. It's just insane. There's a considerable investment to get the Spider Ball though, maybe 10 hours for the average player. But like so many other parts of the game, the payoff is very big. At that point, about halfway into the game maybe, you start to shake your head in awe at things. You start wondering how things are so well plotted out. There are so many trails that lead you on your way. There are these subtle little cues through the art style, and you never have to endure instructional cutscenes or anything like that. It's just you, solitary confinement. Figure it out, and you will, with patience. That's one big reason why I'd say this is one of my favorite games of all time. It's just such a cerebral experience. You have to figure out a lot of stuff. And there are so many subtle touches. Enemies are not designed to just be merely shot at. You really have to figure them out. Plus, they're just really cool looking. The Ink Smasher, check this guy out. He's like this Hulk. Not even a boss, mind you. And you have to fight through his shields, his earthquake attacks. Then there's these really clever enemies, Resbits, which will actually take your visor offline, and you can't attack them at certain points. Like I said, enemies are just really clever. Enemies are puzzles in their own way. And thankfully, most of the enemies are new. Echoes is very tough because of this. The hint system is minimized, kind of in an old school attitude. It asks you just to explore on your own. Boss battles have been ramped up noticeably, and with most bosses I died several times before I figured out just what to do. This guy, Quadraxis, you've probably heard about him. Truly talented boss making here. I won't spoil anything for you, but this guy does some cool stuff. And he's basically as complex as the final boss was in the original Prime. I think that says a lot. But he's not the last boss in Prime 2, and again, that's just a sign that Echoes is for very serious gamers. Overall, the single-player experience is simply masterful if you give it time. Rated 9.5, it's easily one of the best games of this generation. For all of its subtleties, its top-notch presentation, its pacing, and so on, I give it my highest recommendation. I wish its beginning were more explosive like Prime 1's Space Station, and I wish the ending didn't send players on a quest to find 9 temple keys with little Abe. But in the end, you really have some very big payoffs for all the work that you do. Then there's multiplayer. As a finicky fan of Metroid, I'm sad to see Nintendo and Retro caved and wasted their time on it. It's hackneyed implementation of what people used more often in the N64 days. It's just really kind of unfitting for a game that's about being alone. The lock-on mechanics get boring in multiplayer. 2-player runs pretty well, but 4-player drops below 30 frames per second constantly. Overall, it's not bad, but it's just unneeded. I would have much preferred they spent their time on a bonus mode where, you do Morph Ball puzzles that are set up for you, or single room puzzles that can be unlocked, something like that. And that's about all we have time for with the video review. I think if you're looking for a challenge in terms of puzzle solving and world exploration, and not strictly an action-based shooter, then you'll love Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. It's not like Majora's Mask was to Zelda. I mean, you should probably expect something a lot closer to what Prime was, so it's pretty similar. But there's just a lot more intricacy here and a lot more detail. I can think of few games that display so much forethought and solid execution.